hope you all had a really lovely break and enjoyed the refreshments upstairs. We're now going to move on to the next part of our day today, which is to welcome Dr. Harriet Marshall to the Leo Conference. Harriet is Head of Educational Research at LIFTA and has been a global education advocate for over 20 years as a teacher, researcher, consultant and education project leader. Prior to being at LIFTA, Harriet was a national leader on the Global Learning Programme and lecturer in international education. We feel very fortunate that Harriet is able to join us today in order to share her wealth of experience with us. So over to you, Harriet. Thank you for joining us.
I'm not connected, so I need the computer that was up here. This lady's coming. Hello everyone, while we're waiting for the technology. Oh, it is there, okay. And do I have a clicker? Perfect. I work in an ed tech company and know a little bit about technology. This is me, and I am very, very honoured to be here today. What a fantastic venue and what an amazing number of people here. Hands up if you've heard of, or let's start with heard of LIFTA. So that's good. Hands up if you've used LIFTA. Okay, I hope to talk a little bit about that, but first of all I'm going to talk a little bit more about the thinking behind what we do. There's 3 images up there. The first one you might recognise, it's that 1958 iconic NASA image of the Earth. When we started understanding a little bit more about what the world was, what was happening, shifts, changes. We've had this intelligence, and this intelligence has got better and better. And the movement for bringing the world into schools, whether that be through environmental or sustainability angle, through the idea of world citizenship without borders, has been around for some time. And some people are often surprised when I say, well, the Council for Education and World Citizenship started in 1939. And I remember going, when I first started teaching in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, to their offices in London, and seeing how they had mapped global citizenship, environmental issues across the curriculum. And the point I'm just making is this desire to make sustainability, bring sustainability, global lens into schools, into the curriculum, is not new. It's been around for a while. But what's changed recently are some very significant things. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to read a little bit. I have a tendency, because I get so passionate about this sort of thing, to go off-piste a little bit. So I start by reading and then sort of take the leash off and allow myself to go off. So many projects have come about over the last few decades, and they've come about for different reasons. To Ayo's point earlier, different whys. They might have been really about bringing in human rights education, human rights understanding. They might have been linked to the UN's Decade for Education for Sustainable Development, 2005 to 2014. Might have been linked to UNESCO projects. Maybe you've been part of a UNICEF's Rights Respecting School Award or the Eco School Awards. So many initiatives and so much out there to choose from. Everyone in this room knows only too well that when there is an identified societal challenge, local, national, global, that the general response is, we need to change education. We need to get this in the curriculum. We need young people to learn about this stuff. Whether policymaker or activist, all teachers, educators, everyone in different situations in an educational context have been left to navigate the gap between the challenge, the context, and our young people's sense of connection with this. Topical, timely, single issues are easier. Our young people want to better understand what they're hearing about in the news and what is directly impacting their lives and what they can tangibly see. COVID, rising temperatures, Ukraine and news, not least because projects and resources pop up in response to these at speed, and also there's money often around the things that are trendy and exciting and there in our faces. But what helps young people connect the dots, develop a systems thinking, a global competencies and a sense of connection so that these activities are more sustainable and consistent and co-owned? As I said, education, sustainability education, global citizenship, it's had a long history. I could go off on a tangent and talk about the different terms and what they mean and whether that matters. But as I say, we're all navigating the gaps between what we know and what we know we need to do, and feeling the need to do that and to change behaviours, to understand systems. And what's so different about where we are now? Well, 3 quick answers. We've got more intelligence about the realities of the world now, thanks to increasingly sophisticated methods of monitoring, satellites that circumnavigate the Earth, taking daily pictures so that we can see deforestation, melting ice caps, stranded villages after tsunamis, dwindling numbers of walruses on the Arctic, and military manoeuvring in conflict situations, ways in real time that can't be disputed. Although I did get chatting to we had a plumber around the other day who said his favourite nighttime occupation when he can't sleep is to go on these sites where you've got climate deniers and flat earthers having a chat. So they do still exist, but the evidence there is there now. We've known more than we ever know. That's the first change. Second, we have the 4th industrial revolution with AI, tech advances, online connectivity, facilitating incredible innovation and societal change, and ethical dilemmas in equal measure. And then third, and it's been beautifully illustrated here today, we've seen a welcome movement to better include and listen to the voices of young people in education and societal research more generally. We know that the desire for more and better sustainability education and world understanding comes from young people themselves. We know too that they are anxious about the state of the world. So in this situation, there's loads of reports, loads of analyses, loads of policies, loads of frameworks and recommendations. We sort of often have to react and respond. And we have to go with what we connect with. So if this was my 11-year-old, I was talking, I don't even have to ask, but we were talking about it the other day. It's the latest, WWF report, which I'll mention in a minute, because she loves animals and she sees the world through their eyes. Now, if it was my 13-year-old, and he does like the Sustainable Development Goals, atlases, charts, graphical depictions. For me, it's something like the Social Progress Index, which I'll show in a minute, a different way of measuring global progress other than GDP, things like Earth Overshoot Day, and if I want an injection of positivity, if I want to see that things aren't as bad always as we think, to balance the negative, gapminder.com is an awesome resource. So we're grappling with what lens do we have? And I think I might let myself off the reading leash in a minute. We've got, as I say, different reports. And some get mentioned when we talk about climate change and some don't. And the reason this presentation is about the SDGs is because I think it's a great way, a framework to bring these together. So whether you come at sustainability because you are interested in the idea of building global citizenship in schools, or whether you are going to be doing it because you're interested in building intercultural competencies, intercultural understanding, whether you do any of those things, you've got to ask some questions. Which lens are you having? So what's your why? And what connects you and how? because we're asking young people too to connect. And what is the angle that they're coming at? There's so many reports out there. And it could be that your school is doing a program linked to sustainability or green schools, as we heard earlier, or a different angle on bringing in the world. And is there a way of linking these all together so it all becomes meaningful and can all become part of one cohesive strategy as opposed to lots of different projects? And does it matter if we see things in a different way? Anyone familiar with either of those images? Hands up if you've seen them before. See, hands up if you've seen the left-hand one. Yeah, the right-hand one? Yeah, you might not have seen that one. So the left-hand one is Professor Ed Hawkins' climate stripes. It's awesome. It's been measuring climate temperatures and climate change since, I think, 1850. And it puts them into a graph according to colour. What's quite interesting about this is how there's lighter colours. So the darker red, the higher the average temperatures. The lighter colours towards the last couple of years around COVID is when the world stood still in a way that it hadn't before, and the impact was evidenced in colour there. This one, you might not have seen before, the biodiversity stripes, which another professor, Miles Richardson, has recently brought about as a result of the Living World report, which I'll mention in a minute. Does it matter what angles, whether it's my 11-year-old who would come at it more from the right hand, the biodiversity, or my 13-year-old who might be more interested in the data? I'm not sure. I think it doesn't. I think we have to just be aware where we're coming at these things from, and aware of their connections and interconnections. And the question is simply, how can we ensure that any of sustainability projects that we do are meaningful, are evidence-informed, are empowering and genuinely inclusive. Meaningful so they can be engaging and build connections, and evidence-informed so that they can be born out of the, evidence and data, as opposed to sort of one non-educator's entrepreneurial idea solely based on their own schooling experience, which I have seen too, and empowering so that they're impactful and create a sense of belonging and co-ownership, genuine agency amongst teachers and students. And the most important, I think, is inclusive, so that everyone feels included and represented. So let's get on to the point. SDGs, we've had them up before. What's so significant about the SDGs is that they are profoundly interconnected. We can't meet any single one of those. So the 17 Sustainable Development Goals came out in 2015. We have to meet a set of 169 targets by 2030. With every target, there's lots of indicators. I won't go any further than that. But they're loosely framed in themes, but they are all entirely interconnected. We cannot meet climate change targets or targets around life below water without addressing fundamental issues of poverty and health and well-being. And I'm going to illustrate this a bit. So where we sit, and anyone interested in doing sustainability, bringing sustainability into schools, is in target 4.7. We are definitely there, and it's very much about bringing in sustainable development education, global citizenship, intercultural education, and they're trying to monitor it too across the world. Every country that's signed up to this, all 193 UN states that signed, have to do a report every year of how well they're doing to meet these targets. And the reason I've put 10 up there is because the UK is not doing so well on SDG 10, on reducing inequalities. In fact, the gap is getting bigger. And the Social Progress Index, which is an index, as I mentioned earlier, that monitors how we're doing as human beings, it tells us that we're actually regressing. Things are getting worse here. And to deny that context that we're all working in would be crazy and foolish. So we come at different angles that maybe you might have heard of. And the key thing is, what resonates with you? You might have seen Oxfam's Global Citizenship education toolkits and frameworks. They've got one on the Sustainable Development Goals, they've got definitions of global citizenship. I've seen them appear in school development plans in China, that even though this is written in a UK context, they are internationally known, but they can be criticised too, as can everything. UNICEF, their Rights Respecting School Award, they have gone on to map the Convention of the Rights of the Child, for anyone that works with that framework, to the Sustainable Development Goals. Briefly, it looks a bit like this, a bit complicated, but all the articles and targets are linked together. So again, bringing together different ways of bringing in the world, but creating the connections too. Diversity educators, which is a collaboration, and some of you might be involved, of a network of fantastic educators in the UK, and they've been producing toolkits, and I was asked to do the one on global citizenship. And if you want some resources, quick resources, and links to both research and impact stuff, I do recommend that. Why I don't think it sort of matters what your why is and how you come at sustainability or global learning, or if you want to come at it from a human rights angle, is because I think when we ultimately think about what the purpose of education is, we are usually on the same broad book around human flourishing. Human flourishing in all forms: academic, social, cultural, emotional, and Lifter is a Finnish and an English company, and in Finland they have this wonderful concept of sustainable well-being, where they bring sustainability and human well-being together, and that you can't achieve one without the other. And this I think is a really interesting concept. You may or may not be familiar with the round circle, which is PISA's Global Competencies Framework. So it's an optional way of monitoring how countries around the world are teaching global competencies and a way of measuring them. So lots of other things out there that work with the Sustainable Development Goals, and some are organic and are wonderfully emerging, again facilitated by tech here. Movements of teachers all around the world that are sharing what they've been doing around the Sustainable Development Goals and projects. I was part of the movement here, Teach SDGs, and one of the spin-off projects is a climate action project that's been running for a couple of years now and has absolutely loads of countries and loads of schools involved, but all organically led by teachers who want to share what they've been up to. There's also academia and research who are always interested in what's actually happening, and there's always calls for writing some think pieces around sustainable development education if you innovate, because really interested in the how you do this. This was one way in which a school we were working with mapped their curriculum to the Sustainable Development Goals. They brought in the Sustainable Development Goals, but I'm going to show you how we helped them humanise them a little bit, because as I think was mentioned earlier, some of these concepts are really complex and abstract, and the values required, they're really complicated, and we struggle to understand them. To then bring them into the classroom, it's even harder. So those of you that don't know, Lifter is a platform, an online platform. We specialise in bringing in human stories from around the world. We work with local filmmakers all around the world, and we create lesson plans and resources to support that. And every piece of content, teaching content, is mapped to the SDGs. A different presentation would be about the impact on this. I know that some schools here have been doing some fantastic work, and a big shout out to Stephen Barron from Cheam Farm, who's been doing an interesting way of creating a passport to navigate some of these worlds. I haven't got a clock here. Can someone give me a time check?